What's going on, guys? It's Jack with Jack Banks MMA, and we're back for another edition of early betting ideas for UFC Fight Night Grasso versus Araujo. All right, so let's kick things off with the main event like we've been doing the past couple weeks. And then this week, I've been getting a little bit better at getting my odds in before the fight, capping the fight. So I actually have 11 of the 13 fights capped for you guys. So that way, if there's anything early that we can jump on when the odds first come out, we're ready to take advantage of that action. So like we've been doing, I'm going to start out with the main event, which is Alexa Grasso taking on Viviane Araujo. I think this is a close fight, but I do think Grasso should win 60% of the time. I have her kept at minus 150. Araujo at around like plus 125, plus 130, I think is fair. I just think Grasso's faster, and I think that speed difference with her boxing, with her hands, is going to play out in this fight because I think Grasso has the ability to keep this fight on the feet. Araujo is more powerful, but Grasso is more technical, and she's faster. And to me, thinking that Grasso will be able to keep it on the feet, and her grappling has improved, even if it goes down to the ground. We saw that in her last fight, with a submission win in the first round against Joanne Wood. So I like Grasso in this fight. I am concerned that the odds might be a little too far in her favor because Araujo has proven, she deserves respect. She's very strong. She's powerful, and she does fade a little bit after the first round, but it's not like she falls off a cliff. She has the ability to maintain, for the full fight. It will be interesting to see how the fight plays out in a 5-round capacity. All right, so the two fights just quickly that I don't have capped, so you guys know, are Neil Magny versus Daniel Rodriguez and Misha Serkinov versus Alonzo Menafield. Magny Rodriguez, I just didn't have time. And Serkinov versus Menafield, to be honest, I had a really tough time capping that fight. So I just didn't. I'm going to pass on the action there. So the first fight that I have capped for you guys, start near the top of the card, or what I think will be near the top of the card, which is Askarov versus Brandon Royval. This is obviously outside the main event. I think Askarov, he's interesting to me because he is a very good wrestler. Obviously, everyone knows this. And his boxing is pretty decent, honestly. But it does seem like maybe it's because of the division, right? At flyweight, it's really hard to control people, and at the same time, flyweight isn't the deepest division, so he's had to go up against the creme de la creme, right? And against Pantoja, he was able to keep him down, but Pantoja was constantly threatening submissions, and it was a close fight, but Askarov did win. And then against Moreno, I thought Moreno won that fight. I know a lot of people thought Moreno won that fight, which is interesting. And then Askarov versus Tim Elliott. I mean, it was mostly Askarov in that fight as well. He almost put Tim Elliott out on the feet in the first round of that fight, which was really interesting to see. But Elliott also was able to get some upper body throws and using some trips and stuff, and was actually able to get some time on top in that fight, albeit he did lose unanimous decision pretty handily. And so that was interesting to see because with Elliott and with Moreno, we can see common opponents between Royval and Askarov. And so those are the fights I was kind of focusing on. And for Brandon Royval, the Tim Elliott fight was his UFC debut. And it was really interesting because Tim Elliott is known as a guy who puts pace on people. He's constantly attacking. He's really unorthodox. And it was funny, I was listening to the commentary, and Royval described his fighting as like ADD. He said he knew Elliott was weird, but his fighting was like ADD fighting. And I mean, or ADHD, right? And Royval really does fight like that. He never stops moving. And I think that's going to present a very interesting set of challenges for Askarov, because I think it's going to be very difficult for him to contain him on the mat. Now, Rogerio Bontorin was able to do that for parts of their fight with Royval, and it was a very close split decision. Could have gone either way. I know some people definitely thought Bontorin won that fight. And so there's a path for Askarov to be able to settle Royval down. And Royval has not necessarily slowed down, but reined in a little bit of his craziness. Not a ton, but a little bit over the course of his UFC career. With that, though, he's fighting a little bit more intelligently, and he will have a height and reach advantage in this fight. With all that being said, I think it's a very close fight, but I do think Askarov wins more than 60% of the time. I have him capped as a minus 175 favorite, which might be a bit steep. It's Royval has an avenue to win this fight, which is why I probably will either play Royval or pass. But it's hard because he doesn't. It's hard to say what the clear path to victory is, because Askarov was able to deal with the jiu-jitsu of Pantoja, and that's the best jiu-jitsu in the flyweight division, if you ask me. So it's a tough fight. I think the way to play it is Royval or pass. So moving on to the next fight that I have capped here, which is going to be Piera Rodriguez taking on Sam Hughes. The next two fights, I got to be honest with you guys, have prospects that I like, I'm fans of. So it was a little bit difficult for me to give unbiased odds, but I did the best that I could. So this is a very, very good fight, I think, in women's strawweight division. Piera Rodriguez, this will be her second UFC fight. Sam Hughes, I believe this is her fourth or fifth. So Hughes has the experience advantage, no doubt about it. And Hughes is coming in with some momentum, right? She's won her last two fights. She has found, she's figured out who she is as a fighter. And I think that's very important for any fighter to figure out. She knows she's going to apply pressure. She's going to grapple. She's going to look to wrestle. And she's going to continue to do that until the opponent wilts. And she doesn't care if she loses the first round, as we saw in the Estela Nunes fight. She's going to stick to her game plan and keep moving forward. What I think is going to be the problem for Sam Hughes in this fight is, while Rodriguez does have the kickboxing background, similar to a Nunes or an Elise Reed, Sam Hughes' last two opponents, Rodriguez, in my opinion, has much better grappling. And we've seen that in her Contender Series fight, and even her fight against Kay Hansen, who I've faded Kay Hansen multiple times in her fights. She's not the best fighter, but if there's anything that Kay Hansen's good at, it's wrestling, it's grappling. And Rodriguez definitely had some UFC octagon jitters in the first round, but then after that, she was the one getting the takedowns on Kay Hansen. And I think that is notable, because Sam Hughes' path to victory in this fight, in my opinion, is going to be the grappling. And I think Rodriguez will be able to do enough to keep it on the feet or get her own takedowns on Sam Hughes, which is something that Sam Hughes hasn't had to deal with so much in her past few fights. She hasn't had that threat coming back to her, and I think that's given her an advantage in that aspect. Now, I have it capped as Rodriguez minus 150. I think she gets it done 60% of the time. Hughes plus 130. But I have a lot of respect for Sam Hughes based off of her last few performances. So I may play Rodriguez here, but more likely I'm going to look to play some over props, because I think Sam Hughes is incredibly tough. I don't think Rodriguez is going to be able to get her out of there, and I don't think Hughes will be able to get Rodriguez out of there with her wrestling. So I like fight goes to decision. I have it capped as minus 300. Over 2.5, minus 230, about 70% of the time. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing where those props are at sometime next week. So next fight, like I said, another prospect that I really like is going to be Tatsuro Taira taking on CJ Vergara. And again, CJ Vergara, excuse me, is somebody who you have to respect. He is insanely tough. Similar to Sam Hughes, he loves to pressure. The one difference, though, is I would say Vergara is looking to pressure and use his boxing. He will mix in the takedowns, but he likes to and prefers to keep it on the feet. And so, with that being said, even in his last fight against Clayton Rodriguez, who a lot of people are very high on after his Contender Series bout, and I like Clayton, but I didn't play that fight because I thought the line was way too wide on Rodriguez. I think it ended up being like minus 350 or even minus 400, and I had Rodriguez closer to like minus 200, so it wasn't playable to me. It was a very, very close fight. I know Vergara won the fight, and largely due to his second round performance. But I think the difference in this fight against Taira is going to be that Taira has the grappling to negate some of the pressure that Vergara is going to bring. I think if Vergara comes too hard, Tatsuro Taira is just going to take him down. And we've seen in his UFC debut and in his fights before the UFC, Taira has a really good ability to, number one, control opponents, but number two, take their back. And if he's not able to do that, he's got a really good triangle. He's very dangerous off his back. And I think it's going to be... I really like Taira in this fight. I have him capped as minus 210, Vergara plus 185. I think if Taira was fighting somebody else besides Vergara, I think I would be even higher, to be honest. But Vergara is so tough, he's so durable, and he is the pressure, and we don't know. Taira is still young in his career, so we don't know if maybe he will wilt to some of that pressure. With that being said, though, similar to last fight, I don't see a finish, but I do have the odds a little bit down in terms of, I have it over 2.5. That's the prop I like, but I have it as minus 150. I do think there are some paths to a finish for either Taira or Vergara in this fight. And, having said that, with Vergara's toughness, I might be looking to play Taira via decision, depending on the odds. I think Vergara is more than likely going to get there, going to get to the finish, and Taira, well, I think probably I'm having a tough time with that, but I do think Taira via decision is worth a look, so it'll be something I'll be looking to potentially play come next week. All right, moving on. Next fight, this one will be quick. It's Mana Martinez versus Brandon Davis. I have it kept as Martinez minus 150, Davis plus 130. I think it's a close fight. I think Martinez is younger. The Ryan Lawrence fight didn't start out good for Mana Martinez, but it sure did end well. And I think Martinez will be he'll have a little bit of a moral victory from the way that one ended coming into this fight. And Brandon Davis really did not look good at bantamweight in his last fight. And it's something where with his age, I'm a little concerned. But, I'm not going crazy on Martinez here, minus 150, 60% of the time. Next up, Mike Jackson versus Pete Rodriguez. Guys, if Mike Jackson wins this fight, kudos to him. I have Rodriguez as minus 400. And I'm going to be looking to play Rodriguez via TKO or KO, minus 150. Is Pete Rodriguez the best fighter? No. But is he a guy who consistently trains, has been fighting consistently for the past few years? Yes. That's really all this comes down to me. If you want to play Jackson, I don't mind it. Rodriguez is not some world beater. And Jackson will have a height and reach advantage for sure. So I think this fight doesn't go to the decision. That's another way you can play this fight. The under 1.5. I think if it's reasonable, I have it minus 150. If it's too crazy, don't play it. But it's another thing that makes sense to me in this fight. And I have Rodriguez minus 150 to get that TKO. So if it's plus money, I'm going to be smashing that one for sure. Next up, Raphael Assuncao taking on Victor Henry. Now, this is a great opportunity for Victor Henry because I think if he gets a win here, his next fight is going to be in the top 15. Which is crazy because this guy was like a plus 400 underdog against Raoni Barcelos, in January, I believe it was. And not only did he win, but he looked incredible. And I don't know, like Assuncao on the feet, Henry is going to push a pace. Like if he does anything like he did against Barcelos, I think he can get Assuncao out of there potentially. But I don't know. Like Victor Henry is really good, but I watched a few of his fights. Like I haven't watched all of them to be fair, and especially I was having trouble finding the most recent ones. I watched the Kyler Phillips fight, for example, and the pace he put on Raoni Barcelos. Like if you guys have seen other fights where he's done that, I haven't seen him do that before. It was crazy. I think he was landing like 50 or 60 significant strikes a round. And Barcelos was drowning in there, basically. Henry's the younger fighter here. Assuncao has not looked good in his past few fights. Obviously the finish from Ricky Simón, there's a little bit of a different angle with the Ricky Simón fight. You got to worry about the wrestling. And Victor Henry's a really good grappler, but I don't think the wrestling's nearly the same as Ricky Simón or the power. But the volume is certainly there. I have Henry minus 175 to Assuncao plus 150. I like Henry in this spot. I think he gets it done, and I think he's looking at a top 15 opponent in his next matchup. Moving on, 3 more fights to go here, guys. So next up for me, at least, I don't know what the bout order is going to be. Melsik Baghdasaryan versus Joanderson Brito. This is going to be an explosive fight for as long as it lasts. The first round is going to be wild. I really think. So the first prop I would say actually that I have capped for this one is I don't think this is going to the judges. I have it fight doesn't go to decision minus 400, 80% of the time. Baghdasaryan's a finisher. Brito's a finisher. Brito does have the grappling advantage in this fight. Which is interesting. And, I have this capped as Baghdasaryan minus 150, Brito plus 120. You could talk me into Brito being the favorite. I think it's a close fight, but I think Baghdasaryan on the feet has the advantage. And I think Brito's takedown ability is solid but not amazing. And Baghdasaryan's pretty strong from what I've seen. So I think Baghdasaryan will be able to keep it standing. I'm not sure if I'm gonna look to play this one. This is a volatile pick to me. I think I'll be leaning, if I play anything, towards it doesn't go to the scorecards. But I think more than anything, it's gonna be a very fun fight to watch. So it's definitely worth tuning in for, if nothing else. Nick Maximov taking on Jacob Malkoun. This is going to be a grappler versus grappler affair. If it ends up taking place on the feet, Maximov, maybe. I gotta be honest with you guys. I have this capped. I try to cap it, maybe a week or so before I do these videos, and I had it capped as Maximov minus 230 or so, Malkoun plus 200. And as I'm doing this right now, I think that might be a little high on Maximov. Like, Malkoun is a really good grappler. The only difference is Maximov is more inclined to hunt for a submission, where I feel like Malkoun is more looking for position. So I think there's more danger on the Maximov side, but Malkoun is tough, durable, and he's got a really good gas tank, So I know everyone wants to get back on the Maximov hype train after his last loss to Petrovsky, but I think in some ways this is a similar matchup to Petrosky, just minus some of the danger, because I haven't seen Malkoun really threaten, as much with the submissions. Last fight, Dusko Todorovic versus Jordan Wright. Let's just hear the odds that I have capped at. Todorovic minus 190, Wright plus 160. I would like to go more, but I can't really go more on Todorovic here. He just hasn't proven it to me at the UFC level. His competition pre-UFC dwarfs, what Jordan Wright was fighting. So honestly, I think if it's at 230, I'll probably still play Todorovic. I don't, Jordan Wright, unless he's made massive changes to his fighting style, I don't see this one getting past the second round. So the under 1.5, I feel like makes sense. I have it minus 175. We'll see what it's at. And fight doesn't go to decision. Again, minus 400 here. Neither one of these guys is a guy who typically goes to the scorecards. And Jordan Wright, if he's going to fight in the same manner as he has been, there is a chance he dials it back, based off his last couple performances. But if he does, he's going to force Todorovic to either get the finish or be finished. And that's how Jordan Wright typically fights. So that's how I'm going to look to bet it. Let me know what you guys think about my bets here, the way I have this UFC Fight Night capped, and what you want to see moving forward. There's going to be another break period in between the fights this weekend. Dern versus Jan versus Grasso, Grasso versus Araujo. So I'm looking for ideas for that week in between. But as I said, I'm hoping that this will help you guys take advantage of some of the early odds. You're ready to go once they're posted. And I'll see you guys next time.